Make your son apologize right now, or take your kids out of my house forever, my father said after my sister's daughter threw my son's lunch into the mud. My sister watched with a smile. I took my son's hand and left without arguing. By 6 a.m., my father was begging outside my door. The mud was still on his shoe when my hands found him. Nolan did not cry. That is the part that matters before anything else. My 7-year-old son was standing at the edge of my father's backyard, holding an empty paper plate with both hands, and the peanut butter sandwich from that morning was face down in the flower bed, pressed into the wet dirt, by a 5-year-old girl who had done it while smiling, and my son did not cry. He stood there with that paper plate, looking at me across the yard, and he waited, because that is what his father taught him to do when something goes wrong. You wait for the person who is going to fix it. My knees hit the grass. My thumb wiped the mud off his sneaker. My hand took his. Behind us, the table was still full. My father, Leland, my sister, Pam, her husband, Troy, her daughter, Zoe, who had just slapped a plate out of a bigger child's grip and watched it land, and Pam still sitting in her chair with her iced tea, watching the whole thing with a smile she did not even try to hide. Zoe, apologize to Nolan, my voice said. That is all. No raised volume, no pointing. One sentence, the way you say something when you expect basic decency from people who share your blood. Pam crossed her arms. For what? They were playing. They were not playing. Nolan had been sitting alone at the kids' table eating his lunch. Zoe walked over, grabbed the plate, and threw it. My wife Camille saw it from the kitchen window. She was already walking outside when my feet got to Nolan first. Troy leaned back in his chair and picked at his teeth. Kids are kids, man. Your boy is too sensitive. My father stood up from the head of the table. He had been watching the whole thing and had not said a single word to Zoe. Not one word. But the moment his son asked his granddaughter to apologize, he straightened up like the walls of his house had been insulted. She is 5 years old, Leland said, and your boy was sitting in her spot. There is no assigned spot, Dad. He was eating his lunch. Pam uncrossed her legs. Grant, you are making a scene. Over a sandwich. Zoe was playing, and Nolan should learn to hold on to his plate. She did not bump it, Pam. She grabbed it and threw it. Oh, come on. Do you hear yourself? Troy, tell him. Troy wiped his mouth with a napkin he had not used. Your kid sat there looking like a kicked puppy, man. Maybe if you toughened him up a little, other kids would not mess with him. Troy, this is between me and my father. Leland slapped the table. Not hard. Just enough to make the plates rattle. Make your son apologize right now, he said. His voice carried across the yard like a gavel. Or take your kids out of my house forever. The table went still. Forks stopped. Camille's hand froze on the porch railing. Pam's smile grew wider. Troy reached for another piece of cornbread like the verdict had already been delivered, and the rest was just paperwork. And Uncle Bert, my father's older brother, sitting at the end of the table with both hands wrapped around a glass of water. Bert was not smiling. Bert was watching me the way you watch someone standing on the edge of something they cannot come back from. Leland, Bert said quietly. The girl threw his food. Stay out of it. Bert closed his mouth. He set his water glass down. He looked at me, and in that look was every Sunday dinner, every family gathering, every time Bert had watched Leland choose Pam over me and said nothing, because that is what his generation does. They watch. They witness. And they remember. My son's hand was still in mine. His fingers were warm and trusting. He was looking up at me, waiting to see what his father would do when the world was unfair. So his father showed him. Nolan went over my hip. Camille already had the car door open. The diaper bag was on the seat. Nolan's jacket was folded on the console. My wife had stopped expecting fairness from my father's house about 3 years ago. She just buckled him in, got in herself, and closed the door. But before the truck pulled away, Leland leaned into the open window, and this is what came out of his mouth. In front of Uncle Bert, in front of Camille, in front of the whole yard, your boy is soft. Because you are soft, Grant. You married a woman who shelves books for a living, and you think that is a life. You crawl under people's houses pulling wire like your mother's death gave you permission to stop trying. Pam built a real family. Your mother would have been proud of her. She would have looked at you and asked what happened. Camille's knuckles went white on the door handle. Her jaw set in a way only seen once before, the day a parent screamed at her in the school library and she stood her ground without raising her voice. Nolan was in the back seat, looking at his own shoes. 7 years old, and he understood tone. He understood that his grandfather had just said something about his father that could not be taken back. Uncle Bert set his glass down so hard the ice shifted. He looked at Leland the way a man looks at a brother he no longer recognizes. That was beneath you, Leland, Bert said quietly. Leland did not acknowledge him. Nobody else at the table moved. Nobody defended my wife. Nobody defended my son. Nobody defended the man who had kept their lights on for 7 years. Pam examined her nails. Troy chewed his cornbread. The window went up. The truck pulled away at the same speed as always. No tire spin. No dramatic exit. Just a man leaving a house that was never going to treat his son the way the boy deserved. By 6 a.m. The next morning, my father was standing on my front porch in the same clothes he had worn at the table, knocking on my door with both fists, and the word he kept saying was please. But the road between that lunch and that porch is the real story. If you are new here, welcome to Family Secret Tales. Hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because this story is not about a lunch plate. This is about 7 years of free labor, a dead woman's ring, a forged beneficiary form on a life insurance policy, and the moment a man who wires buildings for a living disconnected the one his father built on stolen money. My mother, Helen, died 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer. 54 years old. She went from diagnosis to gone in 11 months. And the only thing she asked me to do in those last weeks was take care of the family. Not myself, not my own life. The family. At 26, with a master electrician's license 6 months old and a company registered under her maiden name, Mercer Electric, her son said yes. She never saw the first invoice. After she passed, Leland collected himself the way men of his generation do. No public grief. He sold the family house within 4 months, moved into a smaller place near the edge of town, and used the money from the sale, plus what he called Helen's leftover funds, to buy a 4-unit rental property on Garfield Avenue. 2 duplexes, side by side. $380,000 total, with a $92,000 down payment. The question of where that down payment came from never left my mouth. A 26-year-old whose mother just died does not interrogate his father's numbers. He trusts him. That was the first mistake. Within 6 months, Leland asked me to rewire Unit 1. The panel was from 1974. Aluminum wiring, no GFC outlets, breaker box held together with electrical tape. A licensed electrician would have charged $11,000 for that job. My tools did it in 3 weekends, for free. Leland said thank you exactly once, and it was to the sandwich Camille brought while wire was being pulled in the crawl space. Over 7 years, all 4 units got rewired. Every panel upgraded. GFC protection in every kitchen and bathroom. New circuits for the HVAC systems. Outdoor lighting. Every smoke detector replaced. Fair market value of that work, according to 3 different contractor estimates pulled 2 weeks ago, $76,800. Leland charged his tenants $2,100 per unit. 4 units. $8,400 a month. $100,800 a year. That rental income was my father's entire retirement, and every dollar of it flowed because the electrical systems installed by the son he called a handyman kept those units up to code, insurable, and habitable. My company's license bond, number MC4471, covered my work as the electrician of record. Every panel, every outlet, Every circuit carried my name in the city's permit database. If an inspector asked who wired a unit, the answer was Grant Ashby, Mercer Electric. And then there was the ring. My mother's wedding ring was a simple platinum band with a single sapphire that her own mother had given her. Not expensive by jewelry standards, maybe $3,200 at appraisal. But it was the only piece of my mother that still existed in the physical world. The clothes, the books, the garden tools, the recipe cards, Leland had donated or thrown away within a year of her death. Before she died, my mother wrote one instruction on the ring's appraisal card. Her handwriting, signed and dated, with Bert as witness, "This ring goes to whichever of my children gives me my first grandchild." Nolan was born in June of 2019, first grandchild by over 2 years. Zoe did not arrive until November of 2021. The ring should have come to me. To Camille's finger. To a box in Nolan's room. Leland gave it to Pam at her wedding in August of 2022. He placed it on a velvet cushion during the reception speech, called Pam the daughter Helen always dreamed of, and slid it onto her finger, while 100 people applauded. Nolan was 3 years old. He was sitting on Camille's lap at table 9, the table farthest from the head table, and nobody noticed either of them. I almost said it that night. The words were lined up in my throat like a fuse already lit. But Nolan was sleeping against Camille's shoulder, his thumb hooked into the collar of her dress, and the fuse went cold. Because my mother asked me to take care of the family, and her son was still listening to a dead woman's voice. Uncle Bert found me outside the reception hall, leaning against my truck. Bert never says much. 31 years delivering mail in the same zip code. A man who sees everything and comments on almost nothing. But that night he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Helen would not have done that." 4 words. Enough, because Bert was the only person in that family who ever looked at me and saw what was being carried. That was the smaller betrayal. The ring. The table assignment. The speech about the daughter Helen dreamed of, as if the son who wired her husband's retirement did not exist in the same room. Now let me tell you what surfaced 3 weeks before the Sunday lunch. Henderson Supply. A Tuesday afternoon. A case of 12-gauge Romex for a commercial job in Millfield. Carl, the counter guy, pulled up my account and frowned. "Hey Grant, you running a crew on the south side now? Got about 9 invoices under your license this quarter. Different zones than your usual." "What invoices?" "Under MC 4471. Customer name is Voss Electrical Services. They have been pulling Romex, breakers, outlet boxes, residential stuff, but the account is linked to your license. Show me." Carl turned the screen. 9 invoices. All residential, all billed under my license number, every one of them filed by Troy Voss. "You know this Voss guy?" Carl asked. "He is my brother-in-law." Oh, Carl's face changed. The frown turned into something else. The look of a man who realizes he has just handed someone a piece of information that is going to rearrange a family. "Listen, Grant, I only asked because the zones did not match. If it is a family thing, I can just update the account." "No. Print every invoice. All of them. Going back 2 years." Carl printed 19 pages. The stack sat on the passenger seat of my truck for the entire drive home, and its weight had nothing to do with paper. My sister's husband. The man who had never passed a licensing exam, who had never held a journeyman's card, who had been unemployed for 14 months and told everyone at family dinners that he was consulting. That man had been running unlicensed electrical work under my name for 2 years. The records showed 41 jobs. $42,000 in revenue. No permits filed. No inspections requested. No insurance if any of those jobs failed. If a wire overheated. If a breaker did not trip. If a child touched a hot outlet in a bathroom Troy wired without GFC protection. The liability fell on me. My license, my bond, my company, my family's income. Troy was not just a leech. He was a lit fuse taped to the wall of everything Mercer Electric had built. I almost called my father that night. The phone was in my hand, His name on the screen, my thumb on the green button. But something held the thumb still. Not fear, not caution. A feeling learned after years of tracing wire through walls. The feeling that says, the circuit is not complete yet, there is more. Keep looking. 2 weeks before the Sunday lunch, a trip to Leland's house to replace a faulty breaker in Unit 3. The job took 40 minutes. Afterward, the kitchen sink to wash my hands. And there on the counter, a manila folder with a title company's logo on the tab. Bridgewater Title Services. The folder should not have been opened. But something about the way it was sitting there, right next to the coffee maker, right where my tools always rest, suggested it had been placed for me to see. Or placed there because no one ever thought the electrician would look. Inside, a draft property transfer agreement. All 4 rental units on Garfield Avenue transferred from Leland Ashby to Pamela Ashby Voss and Troy Voss. Transfer date, August 15th, 2026. 3 weeks from that Tuesday in the kitchen. Everything built by 7 years of free labor. Every wire pulled. Every panel upgraded. Every weekend in crawl spaces while Pam was at brunch. All of it signed over to the sister who had never changed a light bulb and the brother-in-law who was committing license fraud under my name. The folder went back on the counter. The towel hanging from the oven handle dried the water from my wrists. The towel my mother had embroidered with small blue flowers when her son was in middle school. The towel Leland had not noticed was still there. And then the desk drawer opened. A MetLife term life insurance policy. Policy number TL 8874-201. Insured, Helen Marie Ashby. Death benefit, $180,000. Original beneficiaries, Grant Ashby and Pamela Ashby. Filing date, March 14, 2017, but clipped to the back of the policy was a beneficiary change form, dated 6 weeks before Helen died. It replaced both children and named Leland Ashby as sole beneficiary. The signature was shaky, barely legible, witnessed only by one of Leland's drinking buddies, and dated during the week Helen was receiving heavy hospice sedation. She could barely lift a cup that week, but somehow she signed a form that redirected $180,000 away from both her children and into the hands of the man sitting next to her bed. The payout records showed full disbursement to Leland. $180,000 and the $92,000 down payment on the Garfield Avenue properties came out of his account 4 months later. The dates matched to the week. My mother's death funded the buildings. My labor kept them standing. My license protected them from liability. And my father was about to give them to my sister and the man who was using my name to break the law. The truck's dashboard clock got stared at for 11 minutes outside that house. Both hands in my lap. No screaming. No steering wheel punches. Counting minutes, because if the counting stopped, things would start breaking. And there is a 7-year-old boy at home who needs his father to come back with clean hands and a steady voice. A boy who waits for the person who is going to fix it. A boy who trusts that person completely. The way a son trusts a father who has never let him down. The way a son once trusted Leland. That trust was the thing in the desk drawer that mattered more than any dollar amount. It was the thing Leland had spent 8 years pretending he still deserved. I almost drove back inside and confronted him right there in that kitchen with the blue flower towel and the transfer folder and the insurance policy spread across the counter. But the photo of Nolan clipped to the visor caught the late afternoon light, and my own voice came back. The voice used when telling my son, when something goes wrong, you wait for the person who is going to fix it. The person who fixes things drove home and called his attorney. Ruth Calloway handled the company's LLC formation. She heard everything. She said, photograph the insurance policy and the beneficiary change form. Photograph the transfer documents. Do nothing else. Monday morning, she would file a civil action seeking a constructive trust over the properties purchased with the disputed insurance proceeds, plus an unjust enrichment claim for 7 years of documented labor performed without compensation. My share of the original policy, $90,000. The fair market labor, $76,800. once filed. A list pendants would attach to all 4 properties and prevent any clean transfer while ownership was being litigated. $166,800. That number would sit on those properties like a padlock on every door. Nothing was transferring anywhere. And then came Sunday lunch. Camille asked me to go. She did not know what had been found yet. She thought it was a normal family cookout. Leland had called on Thursday and said, "Bring the boy. Pam wants Zoe and Nolan to play together." 5 weeks of silence before that call. The invitation felt wrong, like a room with the furniture moved 2 inches to the left. Everything in the right place, but nothing where it should be. Now the reason for the call is clear. The property transfer was scheduled for August 15. The city reinspection of all 4 rental units was scheduled for Monday morning at 8 a.m. Leland needed the electrician of record to certify Troy's recent modifications before the transfer could go through. The Sunday lunch was not a family gathering. It was a work meeting dressed in paper plates and potato salad. He never brought it up. Because Zoe threw my son's lunch into the mud, and Pam smiled, and Leland stood up and demanded that the boy apologize for existing in his space. And the electrician left. Here is what happened after the taillights disappeared. Nolan went into the bath. Camille read him 2 chapters of a book about a bear who builds a boat. By 7:30, sleep had taken him with the bear tucked under his arm. Camille came downstairs and sat across from me at the kitchen table. She looked at my face for a long time. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Known what?" "That they were going to do something like this." "You were not surprised today, Grant. You were ready." She was right. She had always been sharper about people than anyone in my family gave her credit for. Leland called her a bookshelver. She was the woman who read my face better than anyone alive. 3 weeks, the answer came. And then everything followed. The license fraud, the transfer papers, the insurance policy, the beneficiary change form, the $90,000 that should have been in an account with our son's name on it. Camille did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She folded her hands on the table and said, "Then we are done being their electrician. We are done being their anything. Good. What do you need from me? Stay with Nolan." Then the kitchen table became a command center. 4 phone calls. First call, the State Electrical Licensing Board's after-hours fraud hotline. A report that Troy Voss, an unlicensed individual, had been performing electrical work under license number MC 4471 for approximately 2 years. At least 41 documented jobs. $42,000 in revenue. Invoice numbers provided. Addresses provided. Emergency investigation requested. Second call, the city's Building and Permits Office voicemail. A formal notification that Grant Ashby, Mercer Electric, was withdrawing as electrician of record for all open permits associated with Garfield Avenue properties. Any recent modifications not performed or supervised by Mercer Electric should be treated as unpermitted work. Third call, Ruth Calloway. Accelerate the filing. Monday morning, first thing. She confirmed. Fourth call, Uncle Bert. At 10:15 p.m. Bert answered on the second ring. "Bert, Mom had a $180,000 life insurance policy. Both me and Pam were named as original beneficiaries. Someone filed a change form 6 weeks before she died and made Dad the sole beneficiary. The signature does not look right. The money went to Dad. The down payment on Garfield came from that money." Silence on the line. Then Bert's voice, low and steady. "Helen told me about that policy. She made me promise to make sure you and Pam both got your share. She never mentioned any change. No response was necessary." Bert had just confirmed that Helen never intended to remove her children. The beneficiary change form was either forged or signed under circumstances no court would accept. "I will be at Garfield Avenue at 8 in the morning, Bert said. That was all. The knocking started at 5:48 a.m. The kitchen table still had the coffee mug from the night before, untouched, next to the withdrawal notification printed on a single sheet of paper. Leland's truck was in the driveway. The same truck whose trailer hitch got rewired last November for free. The headlights were still on. Steam was rising from under the hood because Leland had driven 22 minutes in July heat with the engine running hot and the AC on full, too panicked to let anything cool before he left. 6 minutes of knocking passed before the front door opened. Camille came to the kitchen doorway in her robe. She looked at the door. She looked at me. She did not ask if it would open. She just poured herself a glass of water and sat down across from me. "He is not going to leave," she said. "No, he is not." When the door finally opened, Leland was standing with both palms flat against the frame, breathing hard. His shirt was untucked. His hair was uncombed. He looked like a man who had not slept and had discovered that sleep was not the thing he had lost. "Grant," his voice cracked, "the inspection is at 8. The city left a message saying you withdrew as electrician of record. What is happening?" "Everything you were supposed to lose." He tried to push past me into the house. My hand on the doorframe did not move. "Just put your name back on the permits," he said. "We can talk about the rest later." "Later ended yesterday, Dad. What if I pay you?" "I can pay you for the work. All of it. We can set up a schedule. You were 7 years late for that conversation." Okay. What about the transfer?" "I will take your name off. I will keep the properties in my name. Nothing goes to Pam." "Is that what you want to hear?" "What I want to hear is silence, Dad, and I am about 30 seconds from getting it." "Grant, your mother would not have wanted this. She would not have wanted her boys tearing the family apart." "Her boys. That is interesting. Because her original life insurance policy named both her children. And 6 weeks before she died, when she could not hold a cup, someone filed a form changing the beneficiary to you." Leland's face flinched like a breaker tripping. He had not known about the discovery. He had buried that form in a desk drawer 8 years ago and never expected the electrician to open it. "Here is what I know." The voice stayed level. The same speed used to read an inspection report to a client who has failed code. "You changed the beneficiary on Mom's $180,000 life insurance policy while she was sedated in hospice. You collected the full payout. My share alone was $90,000. You used $92,000 of that money as a down payment on Garfield Avenue. Your son spent 7 years maintaining those properties for free. The fair market value of that labor is $76,800. You are planning to transfer all 4 units to Pam and Troy on August 15th. Troy has been running unlicensed electrical jobs under my license for 2 years. 41 jobs. $42,000 in revenue. No permits. No inspections. That is unlicensed, contracting, license fraud, and potential criminal exposure in this state. You have been collecting $8.400 a month in rent from units that only pass code because of work done by the man you called a glorified handyman. My attorney is filing a civil action Monday morning. A lis pendens is going on all 4 properties. The licensing board has my complaint about Troy. And the man you told to apologize for existing is the only reason you had a retirement at all. Every word at the same volume, the same speed. No heat, just facts. You said my mother would have been ashamed of how I turned out. You said Camille shelves books for a living. You said my son is soft because his father is soft. You said Pam built a real family. You said all of that in front of your own brother, in front of my wife, in front of a table full of food my family brought. So here is what Mom actually built. Mom built a son who wired your retirement for free. Mom built a son whose license is the only thing standing between you and condemned buildings. Mom built a son who spent 7 years taking care of the family she asked him to take care of. And you gave her ring to the one whose daughter threw his son's lunch in the dirt. The return landed. Every word the old man had said at the table turned around and plugged back into the wall like a circuit completing itself. Leland's face did something new. His jaw opened, but no words formed. Both hands dropped to his sides and hung there like they did not belong to him. His right eye twitched 3 times, fast, like a wire shorting out. His chin dropped to his chest and stayed there. The muscles in his neck had simply stopped trying. His skin went the color of wet newspaper. He was 62 and looked 80. "This is the last time you stand on this porch." The words came out flat and final. The last favor. The last phone call that gets answered. The last wire pulled in your buildings. The last dollar of value carried for your properties. We are done. Not because of yesterday. Because of every day before it. The door closed. Leland stood on the porch for another 14 minutes. Camille watched from the upstairs window. He did not knock again. He walked to his truck slowly, like a man crossing ice, and drove away without turning on his headlights. If this story has been building in your chest, make sure you are subscribed to Family Secret Tales. Turn on notifications so you do not miss what happens next. Because the 6 a.m. conversation was not the end. The inspection was. Monday, 8 a.m. Garfield Avenue. The city inspector was a woman named Margaret Chen, 12 years inspecting properties in this district. She arrived with a clipboard, a voltage tester, and a deputy code enforcement officer named Wells. Leland was already there, standing between Unit 1 and Unit 2 with a folder in his hand. The folder was almost empty. He had the property deed. He had the lease agreements. He did not have an electrician of record willing to certify any recent modifications. "Mr. Ashby, I have a withdrawal notice from Mercer Electric dated last night. They are no longer electrician of record for these properties. Are you aware of that?" "There has been a misunderstanding," Leland said. "Grant is my son. He will be putting his name back on." That is not what the notice says. It also states that recent modifications were not performed or supervised by Mercer Electric. "Can you tell me who did perform them?" Leland's mouth opened and closed. The folder in his hand trembled. Two tenants were watching from the sidewalk. The Okafor family from Unit 2, a couple with 2 children under 10. Dana Whitfield from Unit 4, a single mother who worked night shifts as a pharmacy tech, holding a coffee mug with both hands. Watching the scene with the flat expression of a woman who has seen landlords fail before, and Uncle Bert leaning against his old Buick at the end of the driveway. He arrived at 7:45. He had not spoken to Leland. His presence was the message. Troy pulled up at 8:15 in a truck with a Voss Electrical Services magnet on the door. He was not supposed to be there. But Troy's instinct when things go wrong is to insert himself into the center and try to talk his way out. Margaret looked at the magnet on Troy's truck. She looked at her clipboard. "Are you a licensed electrical contractor, sir?" Troy's smile, the same smile worn for 4 years at family dinners. The smile of a man who has never been asked to produce a credential in his life, dropped off his face. "I work under Grant Ashby's license," Troy said. "Mr. Ashby's firm has withdrawn as electrician of record. Do you hold your own license?" "Not exactly, but I have been doing the work and Grant knows about it." Margaret typed something into her tablet. She walked to Unit 3. She opened the breaker panel. What she found there was not Mercer Electric work. Any licensed electrician can recognize their own installations the way a carpenter knows their own joints. The wiring in Unit 3's kitchen had been redone in the last 6 months. Wrong gauge wire on a 20-amp circuit. No GFC protection on the counter outlets. A bare junction box with exposed copper touching the metal housing. Troy's work. Dangerous work. The kind of work that starts fires in walls at 2 a.m. while families are sleeping. "Mr. Ashby," Margaret said, turning to Leland, "this panel has been modified by someone who is not the licensed electrician of record. The work is unpermitted and does not meet code. I am flagging Unit 3 for immediate shutdown and issuing citations on all 4 units for unpermitted modifications. Total fines if not corrected within 30 days, $14,500. Dana Whitfield set her coffee mug on the porch railing. "Does this mean we do not have to pay rent this month?" she asked. Leland could not answer. Troy started talking fast. "Grant set me up. He told me to use his license. This is all him. He is the one who gave me the jobs. That is a lie, my voice said from beside Bert's Buick. Flat, no heat. The complaint was filed by me. The licensing board has the invoices from Henderson Supply with your name on them and my license number that you never had permission to use. You are lying, Troy said. Leland, tell them. Tell them Grant gave me permission. Leland looked at Troy, then looked at me, then looked at the ground. He did not say a word, because the answer was the truth. And the truth was that Troy had never asked permission and Leland had never cared enough to check. Mr. Voswell said, I would advise you to stop talking. A formal report is being filed with the licensing board, and anything you say here is being documented. Troy's mouth closed. His hands went into his pockets, then came out again, then went behind his back. He had nowhere to put them, because every position made him look like what he was, a man with no credentials standing next to work that could have killed someone. Pam was not there. She had not come. She had sent Troy instead, the way she always sent someone else to handle what she did not want to touch. Leland turned to me. His eyes were wet. His hands were shaking. He grabbed my arm and held on like a man who can feel the current pulling him toward a place he cannot swim back from. I built those properties for your mother, he said. His voice cracked on the word mother. Everything I did was for her memory. You are destroying what she wanted. Helen wanted this family together. She wanted Pam taken care of. She wanted the properties to stay in the family. You are spitting on her grave. The arm stayed still. His grip loosened on its own, the way a hand lets go when it realizes the thing it is holding is not going to bend. Then the truck's back seat produced a single photocopied page. The MetLife policy with the original beneficiary designations, both children's names circled in red. And stapled behind it, the change form, the shaky signature, the single witness, the hospice date. The page went into his hand. His eyes went to the circled names. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Mom's ring, her insurance, her son's labor. You sold all three. The ring went to Pam. The money went to yourself. No raised voice, no step forward. Delivered the way you read an invoice total to a client who knows the number is correct and has run out of ways to dispute it. The tenants were watching. Margaret was writing. Wells was taking notes. Bert was standing with his arms crossed, and for the first time in 34 years, tears were running down the face of a man who had delivered mail in thunderstorms, funerals, and July heat for 3 decades without complaint. Bert was not crying for Leland. He was crying for Helen. The truck started. The driveway emptied. The drive home took 14 minutes. The fallout came in layers, and every layer was a scene. The financial layer hit first, with Unit 3 shut down and citations on all 4 properties. 2 tenants exercised their right to withhold rent until violations were corrected. The Okafor family and Dana Whitfield. $4,200 per month, gone. Leland's mortgage payment on the properties was $3,100 per month. Without the rental income, August payment bounced. The bank sent a certified letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, and Leland's neighbor watched him sit on the front steps reading it without moving for 35 minutes. Ruth Calloway filed the civil action and lease pendants Monday afternoon. Constructive trust claim over properties purchased with disputed insurance proceeds, plus unjust enrichment for documented labor. The title company handling the transfer to Pam called and said the deal could not proceed. Lien on the title had to be resolved first. Pam called once. Her voicemail was 47 seconds long. The only sentence that stayed was, "You are ruining everything because of a ring." She did not mention Nolan. She did not mention the insurance. She did not mention Troy. Just the ring. The social layer came next. Margaret Chen's inspection report was public record. Dana Whitfield shared it with 2 other tenants in the adjacent building. Within a week, Leland's name appeared in a neighborhood Facebook group post titled, "Garfield Ave Landlord Fails City Inspection, Tenants Advised to Document Everything." 43 comments. No response from Leland. The post was shared 9 times. 3 tenants from the other units called to ask if their leases were at risk. Troy's licensing board investigation opened on day 3. By day 12, the board confirmed 41 unauthorized jobs. Troy received a cease and desist letter and a notice of potential criminal referral to the county prosecutor for unlicensed contracting. 3 of his former clients contacted the board after seeing the investigation notice. One of them, a woman in Ridgewood, whose kitchen Troy had rewired, hired her own inspector. The inspector found 2 circuits running on undersized wire with no ground fault protection. She filed a separate complaint. Troy's truck sat in Pam's driveway with the Voss Electrical Services magnet peeled off, but the adhesive outline still visible. A ghost of a business that had never been real. The consulting career he had invented for dinner table conversations was now a file with his name on it at the county prosecutor's desk. Uncle Bert went to Pam's house on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the inspection. He told her about the ring. He told her what Helen had wanted. He showed her the appraisal card with Helen's handwriting, signed and dated, witnessed by Bert himself. The ring belonged to the first grandchild's father, the way Helen wrote it, or it would go into a safe deposit box under Bert's control, and Pam's children would never see it. That ring was a gift, Pam said. Dad gave it to me. Your mother did not give it to your father to give, Bert said. She wrote the instruction herself. You can see her handwriting. You can see my name as witness. The ring goes to Grant, or it goes to a vault. Your choice. Pam returned the ring within the hour. She did not deliver it herself. She left it in a velvet box on Bert's doorstep, rang the bell, and drove away. The emotional layer is the one that sits heaviest. 3 weeks after the inspection on a Saturday morning, Bert called and said Leland had been sitting in the cab of his truck in the driveway of Unit 1 for over an hour. Engine off. Both hands on the steering wheel, not listening to the radio, not looking at his phone, just staring through the windshield at a building he could not enter, could not rent, could not sell, and could not transfer. The tenants had stopped looking out their windows. The curtains in Unit 2 were drawn. The building looked like it was holding its breath, and the man in the truck looked like he had forgotten how to breathe himself. Bert said Leland's face was not angry. It was empty. The face of a man who has spent 8 years telling himself a story about who he is, and the story just ended. And the silence after it is louder than anything he has ever heard. Leland did not call. He did not text. He did not show up at the porch again. He told Bert he was giving Grant space. Bert reported that without comment. Space was not what was happening. Leland was sitting inside the wreckage of a narrative he had built with stolen money and unpaid labor. The narrative where he was the patriarch who held everything together, the man who made the smart investments, the father who kept the family running. But the son who pulled the wire was the one who kept the lights on. The patriarch was staring at dark windows in buildings his dead wife's money had purchased and his living son's skill had maintained. And both of those debts were now on the docket where he could not dismiss them. If this story stayed with you, make sure you are subscribed to Family Secret Tales. Share it with someone who has been the quiet one in their family. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the ones holding everything together, and the people who benefit most are the last ones to notice. It is August now. The units are still flagged. Leland hired a new licensed electrician to redo Troy's work in Unit 3. The quote came in at $9,200. He paid it out of savings because the rent was not coming in and the mortgage was already behind. Ruth Calloway's Liz Pendens is still on the title. The case is not settled. There is no hurry. Pam posted a photo on Instagram last week. A beach vacation with Troy and Zoe. No ring on her finger. No caption. 41 likes. No comments from Leland. Nolan started 2nd grade this month. He brought home a drawing on the first day. A house with yellow lights in every window. Every window, not one dark room. Camille put it on the fridge next to the Bear Book bookmark, and she stood there looking at it for a long time before she turned around and said, "He drew our house, Grant. Look at all the lights. The back porch is warm this evening." Nolan is sitting next to his father eating a peanut butter sandwich on a clean plate. The plate is on a placemat Camille set down, because Camille does things like that without being asked. Because she has always done the quiet things that hold a house together, and every one of those things matters more than shelving books, whatever Leland thinks about it. On the railing, a small velvet box. Inside it, a platinum band with a single sapphire. The stone catches the late afternoon light and throws a small blue dot onto the wood, the same color as the flowers Helen embroidered on a kitchen towel 30 years ago. The phone buzzes. The screen says Leland. It goes face down on the railing, next to the ring. Nolan takes another bite of his sandwich. No mud, no dirt, no one is going to throw it. And the lights in this house work because the man who wired them lives here. Every room lit, every circuit clean, every connection holding. That is not revenge. That is just a fact.